Why is Sunday a holiday? Well, that sounds like a stupid question because why not? After all, we all love weekend to take a break. But still, let's ask this question a bit more technically. Why is Sunday a holiday? Well, the reason is historical and religious. In the ancient Jewish tradition given down by Moses as part of the 10 Commandments, one of the 10 is to keep the day of the Lord holy, which means that one day nobody should be working and pray to their God. In the Jewish tradition, this one day of the week is called a Sabbath. This one day break per week is later adopted into Christianity and Islam as well. So basically, that one day break in a week has historical and religious connotations. It is basically grounded in the Abrahamic philosophy. And then with the colonization, the British and the European imperialistic powers, they imposed this weekend around the world for cultures who are not necessarily connected with Abrahamic philosophy. Well, at least one good thing of all they imposed is one day break in a week. So that's a quick fun fact about why Sunday is a holiday. Another question, why are there just 12 months in a year? There are many calendars over thousands of years being followed around the world, and there are many civilizations which followed this 12-month approach to divide a year. But where are its origins? Of all the calendars around the world, the one being followed in Bharat, which is the Hindu calendar, technically there is no such name as that, but if I really have to give it a name, according to Bharatiya Jyotishya Shastra, it holds the undeniable and incontrovertible aspects which give us the full account of why an year has been divided into 12 months. Let's try to understand that context to further unfold this documentary. In the name of Jyotishya Shastra, precisely in terms of luck prediction or future prediction, this entire Jyotishya Shastra is made a joke by many jokers. Let me get this simple and straight. Jyotishya Shastra is an incredibly fantastic part of the Vedic knowledge system. It has very restricted purposes, and of all the Vedangas, Jyotishya Shastra is revered as the eyes of the entire Vedic knowledge system. Sarvendriyanam Nayanam Pradhanam, which means of all your sense organs, eyes are the most important ones, and that is what Jyotishya Shastra is appropriated with. That is the highest level of reverence Jyotishya Shastra holds in the Vedic knowledge systems. Now that has been merely reduced about when you are going to win your next lottery. It's a shame on us. And we have another set of people who proudly call themselves atheists and rationalists, but this is another set of jokers who don't know anything about Jyotishya Shastra, but just pass stupid comments about it. So let us leave these jokers to fight amongst themselves. Let us try to understand in simple words what is Jyotishya Shastra. If you're a school or college going student, listen very carefully. I'm explaining this specially for you people. Take a typical analog clock that has 3 hands, the hours hand, minutes hand, and the seconds hand. How do we read time? Here from the picture we can clearly say that it is 10 hours, 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Each of the 3 hands of this clock point to a specific point on the perimeter of this clock, which essentially translates into a specific second, minute or an hour. And the culmination of all these 3 essentially gives us what is the time. Now let us take our little blue planet Earth. Around the Earth there are 12 constellations, nothing but clusters of very bright stars. These constellations are outside the solar system. So naturally, Sun is much closer to Earth than these constellations. And when we observe from Earth, we could see Sun in the backdrop of one of these 12 constellations. Now think of an imaginary line, just like an hour's hand or a minute's hand, extending from Earth to Sun. Just like how we read time in a clock, with the revolution of the sun, when you observe from Earth, it appears that the sun is moving in the backdrop of each of these 12 constellations, which takes exactly 30 days, or rather approximately 30 days, to pass through each constellation. The 12 constellations, hence the 12 months in an year. Now same way, imagine moon as another hand of the clock. Same story repeats. Moon traverses through each of the backdrops of the constellation, and there is another way of computing time with taking moon as your reference point. Same way, Jupiter also. Now these 3 are the most important ways or means through which time is computed according to Bharatiya Jyotishya Shastra. Calculating the positions of the celestial bodies precisely to the minute, to the hour, to the second is what Jyotishya Shastra is all about. And for God's sake, it is not about when you're going to win your next freaking lottery. Your trigonometry, algebra, geometry, dealing with unknown quantities, quadratic equations, most importantly, calculus, a lot more is originated from Bharat because of this need to calculate the positions of the celestial bodies. Why? Because it also has a very deep spiritual connect, and let's not go into that space. The ancient time computation mechanisms of Bharatiya Jyotishya Shastra is far more advanced even today than the modern day ways of time computation. It is unimaginably sophisticated. Let me give you a simple example and you'll get to know that. Pushkaras, how are they calculated? Jupiter takes 12 years to complete one revolution around the sun, and according to the Jupiter position, in accordance with the sun and moon position, that is how the Kumbh Mela or the Pushkaras are decided, which comes once in 12 years. Let me give you even simpler example to understand what I'm trying to say. According to modern scientific time computation, our reference point is just the sun. Of course, the obliquity of the earth and then the rotations of the earth, revolutions, all these end of the day hook up centrally only with the sun. But in Bharatiya Jyotishya Shastra, the time computation is depending on the positions of 7 celestial bodies and their relative positions with respect to earth. Now that we get a high level understanding of why 12 months in a year, now let us try to understand the Bharatiya perspective about this little ball of fire, the sun. Owing to the 12 positions of sun in the backdrops of each of the 12 constellations, these 12 positions of sun has highest level of reverence in Bharat as Dvadasa Aditya. Dvadasa means 12. Dvadasa Aditya. And since thousands of years in Bharat, Dvadasa Aditya holds highest level of reverence. So much so that it is ingrained into the life, culture, heritage and everything about Bharat. Unfortunately, the youngsters today in Bharat might not even heard of Dvadasa Aditya. Hence this video, let's delve deep into it in the next couple of minutes. The first of the 12 Adityas is Dhata. When sun comes in the backdrop of the constellation Aries during the March to April period, Aditya is revered as Dhata. And the depictions of Adityas that you're seeing on the right side of the screen are exactly as per Vishwakarma Shastra. So the imagery has a deep significance for each of the 12 Adityas that we're going to see. Then comes the second Aditya, Aryama. When sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Taurus during the April and May period, this form of Aditya is revered as Aryama. And then comes the third Aditya, Mitra. When sun comes in the backdrop of the constellation Gemini, Aditya is revered as Mitra, and this happens in the time period of May to June. A quick side note, this form of Aditya as Mitra is revered and worshipped across Europe around 2000 years ago. Maybe that's a topic for another day, but for now let's move on. The fourth Aditya is Varuna. That's when sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Cancer during the time period June to July. The fifth Aditya is revered as Indra. That's when sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Leo, and this happens in the time period of July to August. Then comes the sixth Aditya, revered as Vivaswan, when sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Virgo, and this happens in the time period of August to September. And then the seventh Aditya, revered as Tvashta, when sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Libra, and this happens in September to October time period. Up next is the eighth Aditya, revered as Vishnu, and this is when sun comes in the backdrop of the constellation Scorpio, and this happens in October to November time period. Ninth Aditya of the 12 is revered as Amshuman, and this is when sun is in the backdrop of constellation Sagittarius. And the time period this phenomenon occurs is November to December. The 10th Aditya is revered as Bhaga, and this is when sun comes in the backdrop of the constellation Capricorn, and this happens during the time period of December to January. And this is quite familiar to all of us because Capricorn is called as Makara Rasi, and this is when we celebrate Makara Sankranti, the process of sun entering the constellation of Capricorn. What's so special about this specific constellation? This is when the winter solstice ends and Earth starts moving closer to Sun, and that's when your spring season would start. So naturally, this astronomical phenomenon has an incredible impact on the agriculture, and so is the reason to celebrate Makara Sankranti. In fact, every constellation has a Sankranti. It is the process of Sun entering a specific constellation is revered as Sankranti, but Makara Sankranti is special for the reason that I just mentioned. The 11th Aditya is revered as Pusha, and this is when Sun is in the backdrop of constellation Aquarius, and the time period that this phenomenon occurs is January to February. And the 12th Aditya is revered as Parjanya, and this is when Sun is in the backdrop of the constellation Pisces, and this phenomenon happens during February to March time period. So that's very quickly about the 12 Adityas. You take any scripture of Bharat, there is high probability that almost every scripture, you take the Vedas, Puranas, Itihasas, Siddhantas, Agamas, no matter what, there is always a reference made to one of these Dvadas Adityas or all of them. Let me quote some precise examples or instances about Dvadas Adityas. Starting with the oldest of all the references, the Rig Vedam. Look, in general, the Vedas are not straightforward, they are quite cryptic to understand. Nonetheless, let's give it a shot. Dvadasha Pragyas Chakramekam. Rig Vedam 1st Mandalam 164.48. That is the precise reference. 12 are the points and the wheel is single. This essentially translates to the 12 constellational positions of Sun around the Earth. And then it goes on explaining about why we had 360 days. In the Rigvedic times, the days are counted as 360. Why, what, how, when, maybe not relevant for the current context. Let's focus only on Dvadash Aditya. But this is one of the oldest references about Dvadash Aditya. A more clear reference about Dvadash Aditya emerges from the 8th Mandalam of Rigvedam. As you can see here, may the Adityas, Savita, Bhaga, Varuna, Mitra, Aryavan bestow upon us the prosperity we plead for. Some of the Dvadas Adityas are quoted in this sloka. Like this, if we search the entirety of Rigvedam, Dvadas Adityas are mentioned in innumerable places. And many hymns were dedicated in the praise and worship of the 12 constellational positions of the Sun, revered as Dvadasa Adityas. And then coming to one more very reliable source, the Itihasa, the Sri Ramayanam itself. And these slokas from the Yuddhakandam precisely quote the Dvadas Adityas at great length. And these are the words of Agastya Maharshi narrating Aditya Hridayam as part of Sri Ramayanam to Bhagavan Sri Ram. Aditya Savitah Surya Kagah Pusha Gabasthiman Suvarna Sadrusho Bhanur Hiranyareto Divakarah Haridasva Sahasrachi Sapta Saptir Marichiman Timiron Madhanas Shambustvasta Martanda Amshuman Hiranyagarbha Shishirastapano Bhaskaro Ravi Agnigarbo Dite Putrahas Shankah Shishiranasanaha. As you can see, the 12 names of Dvadas Aditya are encoded into Aditya Hridayam as part of Sri Ramayanam. Again, another oldest reference quoting Dvadas Aditya. Now let us turn to the scientific scriptures of Bharat like the Surya Siddhantam. This reference clearly mentions that the Sun remains in each constellation for 1 month, 12 such months make an year. A direct answer to the question of why we have 12 months in a year. And Surya Siddhantam is one of the oldest astronomical and mathematical treatises known to mankind. And this is a handwritten manuscript of Surya Siddhantam, couple of centuries old, depicting clearly how the 24 hours per day is calculated and what's the rationale behind it. It is basically an extension to the time computation per month and then in the next level per day as per Surya Siddhantam. And is an extension. Why 24 hours in a day? What you're seeing on the screen is the answer for that. In fact, the English word hour is a directly loaned word from Sanskritam, hora. Hora is one of the 24 equal parts of a day. That hora eventually got translated or rather transformed into the English word hour. And this is what I always say in Project Shivoham in all of my documentaries. Not all great things in this world are invented by Bharat, but all the great things invented or discovered by Bharat are not known to the world. And top of that list is the astronomical and mathematical contributions that came from Bharat. Hence all my effort in making these documentaries. Then let us turn to the physical manifestations of Dvadasaditya. Across Bharat, there are innumerable temples where you can find the manifestations of Surya in different forms of these Dvadasadityas. But all 12 at one place, over thousands of years, in Kashi has been a tradition to worship each of this constellational position of Aditya as Dvadasadityas in 12 places in Varanasi. What you're seeing on screen are these Dvadasadityas. Some of them are quite difficult to find in the cozy streets of Varanasi. But nonetheless, here are all the 12 Adityas in Varanasi. Now let us turn to the physiological aspects of Dvadasaditya. As part of yoga, many of us are quite familiar with the Surya Namaskaram. Surya Namaskaram has 12 positions, as many of us would know. Each of these positions is a Namaskaram towards that specific constellational position of the Dvadasadityas, hence 12 different positions. As part of Patanjali Yoga Shastra, each of the position of the Surya Namaskaram also has a mantram associated with the constellational position of each of the Adityas. And today the whole world is embracing Surya Namaskaram, that is directly paying obeisance to the Dvadas Adityas, knowingly or unknowingly. And those who say yoga is secular, I'm sorry, you are ignorant. So let's not try to secularize yoga, for God's sake. Keep the truth the way it is, whether you like it or not. Now coming to the spiritual side of Bharatiya Samskriti, Sandhya Vandanam is an integral part, or rather an integral and essential part of day-to-day activities of human life. Now let me take the bull by its horns. The word Sandhya Vandanam immediately triggers that, okay, this is some kind of a Brahmanical practice. That is absolutely wrong. Sandhya Vandanam is meant for all the people, men and women of all varnas, just that the way you perform Sandhya Vandanam is different. That's a huge topic in its own right. But for the moment, let us again stick to the specific concept of Dvadasaditya. The essence of Sandhya Vandanam is praying to Surya to enlighten our intellect, our buddhi, so that as human beings, we can use the most powerful instrument, our buddhi, for the betterment of society. This is what Sandhya Vandanam is all about. And this Sandhya Vandanam is intended to be performed 3 times a day: sunrise, midday and sunset. It's tightly coupled with Aditya. So to sum it up all, Dvadasadityas are ingrained into the culture and civilization of Bharat over thousands of years, starting with the oldest references, the Rig Vedam, Sri Ramayanam and many other ancient scriptures which revere the 12 positions of Aditya. And then we have the astronomical texts like Surya Siddhantam, Brihat Samhita, Aryabhatiya, etc., which talk about the mathematical calculations behind calculating the length of a day, month, so on and so forth, everything depending on the position of sun or Aditya. And then we have the physical manifestations of Dvadasaditya across the temples like we saw in Varanasi and many other places across Bharat. And then we have the physiological aspect of Dvadasaditya reflecting in the yoga through Surya Namaskaram and many other asanas and prakriyas in yoga. And the legacy of Aditya in Bharat continues, with even naming the recent solar probe of ISRO as Aditya L1. So what I'm trying to say is the legacy of Aditya in Bharat is far more wide, deep and complex, and it's enormous if we start discovering the significance of Dvadasaditya in Bharatiya Samskriti. Maybe I missed out on the name of Aditya. Metaphysically, Aditya is revered as the son of Aditi and Kashyapa Prajapati, hence the name Aditya. Let me take a quick sidestep, it's quite essential. Satyameva Jayate. People just loosely use these words, Satyameva Jayate. Truth alone triumphs, we should always speak truth, this, that and all. Let me show you a glaring example of what Satyameva Jayate would look like. During the Islamic invasions of Kashmir, some religious lunatic who's against this crude ideology of people should not worship idols destroyed and desecrated this grand temple of Martand dedicated to Aditya located in Kashmir. This happened more than 1,000 years ago. But still, so this person who tried to desecrate and destroy the legacy of Aditya in Bharat by destroying this grand temple could not achieve anything, because till today the legacy of Aditya lives on and on and on. No matter how hard you try to suppress the truth, you cannot deny the fact that every minute, every second of our lives on planet Earth are directly impacted by sun, which essentially translates to the constellational positions through which the seasons happen and everything associated with that. Hence we revere Dvadas Aditya. Even though some insecure religious lunatic try to destroy or suppress, the truth can never be suppressed. And today, proudly, we all Bharatiyas have the solar probe L1 named after Aditya up there in the sky. This is a classic example of Satyameva Jayate. No matter how much you try to destroy the truth, truth always triumphs. And your religious insecurities are stripped naked and people can understand it clearly. So Satyameva Jayate, the gravity of those words is quite heavy. So that's a very brief and quick outlook about Dvadas Aditya and the position and the reverence that Surya has in Bharatiya Samskriti. We did not even scratch the surface. The topic about Aditya, as I said, is wide, deep and complex. Nonetheless, this short documentary is intended to bring in little awareness about what is the significance of Dvadas Aditya and multiple facets of Bharatiya Samskriti. And we from Project Shivoham would intend to dive deep into each of the facets, bringing more content about Aditya. And as always, thanks for watching.